Harley, why in the skibbity are you farting outside of your schedule? I have not set a time for you yet. I heard you farting at 2 in the morning last night. At least 10 or 12 times. And you know what that means. That is a fine. That is going to be at least 350, maybe 400 farts to the face.
Despite currently living in the height of superheroes having influence and popularity in pop culture, comic books have never been doing worse. Sales of comic books have been declining yearly for decades, which honestly sucks. Comic books are an amazing medium for storytelling, and it's not all superheroes. There are some pretty amazing comics in every genre, and watching the industry slowly die is, frankly, painful. However, the industry really only has itself to blame. Japanese comics, aka manga, are doing just fine, though you could argue that manga being a conjoined twin to anime is also giving it a massive advantage. American comic books have spiraled themselves down this path, and nothing really shows the state of the industry more than Harley Quinn's Silent but Deadly.
Oh, hell no! Hell no!
So, DC Comics March solicitations have come through, and yeah. For those who don't know, solicitations are essentially a packet of information sent out to comic book retailers meant to try to convince the store to buy copies of the comics. So they're exactly what they say they are. Solicitations. These usually come through a couple months before the release date, hence why last month was when DC's March solicitations came through. These technically aren't made for the public, but they're not like private information either. So pretty quickly the solicitations end up online, and comic book fans tend to use them to see what's coming up. So DC's March solicitations are here, and we got some pretty exciting stuff. Like, we got a Hush sequel coming out, some pretty exciting number ones are launching that month, we got a new DC gay comic coming out, and oh no! Yeah, let's talk about it. So, this is DC's April Fool's comic, which is launching in March. I've heard it be called a number one, implying there's going to be more, but I've also seen in other outlets that it's just a one-shot. Look, I couldn't tell you either or. The posting of the solicitations I found didn't call it a number one, and so I'm pretty sure it's going to be a one-shot, but at the absolute most, it would probably be a 4-issue run that DC can just very quickly package up into a trade paperback and huck it on Amazon for 20 bucks. Okay, so I'm not gonna dance around this really a lot anymore. It's the Harley Quinn fart comic. So, the solicitation for this is interesting. Most solicitations show the cover art and all of the available variants. It'll have the artist and the author, as well as the retail price for the book. Along with that, there will be a small description, usually only a few sentences at most, describing the book. This is so retailers can decide if stocking the issue will really be worth their time and, more importantly, money. And let me tell you, someone at DC is really fucking excited for this comic. Like I said, solicitations are often short. I mean, here's the solicitation for Absolute Flash number 1. Without the mentor, without the family, without the Speed Force, what's left is the absolute Scarlet Speedster. Short and to the point, right? Okay, well, here's a rather long one that we also got for March. It's for Birds of Prey number 9. Black Canary, Sin, and Megara try to bond through violence as they find themselves overwhelmed by a splinter league of assassins clan bent on reacquiring Sin. Maybe leaving Barda at home wasn't the best idea. Elsewhere, Barda, Cass, and Constantine face the unexpected as they try to return a mischievous demon home while trapped inside the mysterious area known only as the Seam. More detail, but it's a team-up book with multiple main characters, so there's a bit more going on. Oh, and here's the solicitation for what is probably the biggest event for that month. What is probably the thing that is going to carry DC through March. Batman number 158. The Hush sequel. Joseph Leb, Jim Lee, all new epic saga begins here. Hush returns. Yeah, that's it. 12 words, most of them just being the author and artist name, which is listed before the description of the solicitation anyway. To be fair, DC could have just sent an email with absolutely nothing but the words Hush sequel and a giant buy 1,000 cases button, and comic shops probably would have pounced on it the attosecond it hit their inboxes. But still, this is what solicitations look like. Short, to the point, it's fucking Batman, you know what it is. And like Batman, Harley Quinn is currently a big deal. People are really into the character right now. So tell me, Why is the solicitation for the Harley Quinn fart comic 183 words? Warning, this is kind of gross. I've been holding in all my... I can't fucking do this, Jesus. I've been holding in all my very worst bits of bubble guts for the last 32 years, and it's all been leading to this epic expulsion. Your nose will never be the same. You'll gag, you'll cry, you'll feel things you ain't never felt before. This fine publication is a celebration of all things past, present, and tutor. God. Sequential arts placed in the annals of history is about to be changed with the release of the Harley Quinn Fartacular, Silent but Deadly, a comic that promises to have the highest concentration of gas per page, GPP, ever committed to print. Emphasis on committed, because everyone who worked on this comic is getting thrown into Dr. Fartley's home for no good gassy gals and guys. Read the comic that Abraham Lincoln called a joy from fart to finish moments before he died. Jesus fucking Christ. Warning, we aren't kidding. If you are grossed out by farts, then this comic isn't for you, and that's perfectly okay, though I am judging you, unless you want to put your feelings to the test, in which case this comic is for you. Okay, so the big questions looming over everyone are, 1, why, and 2, is this a fetish comic? I don't know, and frankly, I don't want to think about it. However, I can give somewhat of an actual answer to our first question. So, why? Why this? Why now? Okay, so back in 1992, DC Comics decided to kill Superman, and that was the flapping butterfly wings that led us to where we are today. Some say it's Crisis on Infinite Earths, some say it's Nightfall, but most tend to agree that the death of Superman is what, quote-unquote, ruined comic books, and was the beginning of the current trends that we see now. See, the death of Superman was a big deal. It was one of the few times where comics events transcended the comic book fan community and actually made waves in the general public. Mind you, this is pre-internet and pre-social media, so that means that the death of Superman was being reported about on, like, news broadcasts and magazines and newspapers. It was in general media because, you know, Superman is dead. One of the few superheroes that the general public actually gave a shit about at the time was just killed off. The actual story itself is weird and so buried in continuity that it's nearly impenetrable to readers who don't know the history of Superman up until that point. Also, the Justice League at the time didn't look anything like the Justice League now. Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, and The Flash were kind of doing their own comics, and the Justice League was sort of its own separate thing. And so it was comprised of characters like Fire and Ice, and Booster Gold, and fucking Bloodwind. But this doesn't matter. What does matter is that it sold books. This event was a huge deal, and people wanted to see for themselves what all the fuss was about. People wanted to see how Superman died. Being that this was a huge success, obviously DC needed to sort of ride this train forward, and so shortly after, Batman's Nightfall was published, which was a similar type of event, but for Batman, where Bane, well, you know. And once again, this sold books. This got more people to pick up some Batman comics. And so it began. See, in the comic books industry, there's this concept called the stunt treadmill, and this all really started here. And the problem with the stunt treadmill is that once you get on, you can never really get off. And now you're forever stuck trying to go faster and faster to keep outdoing yourself, to keep performing better and being more extreme, just so you can remain in the same place. This is why death is basically meaningless in comic books, because the most shocking stunts they can think of is to kill off a beloved character, but then a popular character is gone, and so now they aren't there to sell books, so they inevitably always have to bring the character back. Also, this is why gorillas are prevalent in DC Comics lore, because for some reason, unbeknownst to me, there is an actual market research done that showed that if your magazine had a gorilla on the front cover, it would sell more copies. This is why we have characters like Gorilla Grodd. So this, the fart comic. This thing that people are, rightfully, fearful of just being kink fuel for the more eccentric Harley Quinn fans, is shocking, but not surprising. The American comic books industry has been falling for decades now, and Silent but Deadly is just one of the many branches that it's hit on the way down. The death of Superman was the initial kick out of the treehouse, and Silent but Deadly is just a sign that we're quickly reaching terminal velocity. Hell, it's not even the first Harley Quinn scratch and sniff comic. Oh yeah, by the way, this is a fart-themed scratch and sniff comic, or rub and smell comic as they're actually called, in case you weren't already aware, because of fucking course it is. But Harley Quinn's annual #1, which was published in 2014, is a rub and smell. Warning, this issue contains scents designed to offend, inform, and amuse, and by that they mean it smells like weed, apparently. Like any gimmick that you can sort out getting printed onto a piece of paper, the comic book industry has done. Hell, there's even been 3D comics before. Like, you would get a shitty pair of those red and blue paper 3D glasses, which, side note, I personally love the aesthetic of, and you could see Optimus Prime reaching towards you, the reader, to lovingly caress you and kiss you goodnight. And again, it was a massive trend, so everyone in the industry was doing it until readers got sick to death with it, and no one was reading comics anymore until they pulled a new dumb trick. And this isn't even exclusive to comic books. Look at movie studios. Look back at all of the trends where one film comes out and then suddenly the entire industry is nothing but derivatives until people get sick of it. And then a new trend is started and it all happens again. We're currently in the superhero craze of movies because of Marvel Studios and the Avengers. But even before that, The Matrix came out and was a huge hit. And then after that, every single movie had to be black leather outfits and over-the-top action. Comic book publishers, just like television productions, just like film studios, are just machines. And if something is making money, it will keep turning that out again and again until the cash flow completely stops and it finds a new thing to obsess over. The superhero comic landscape of DC and Marvel, unfortunately, have just never found that different thing. Pulling insane stunts is the only thing they know anymore, and they don't seem to see any other way forward. Silent but Deadly is doing exactly what it was meant to do. It got people talking about comic books. Not exactly positively, but talking nonetheless. This isn't some fall from grace for comics, and honestly, this probably isn't even the weirdest thing DC has ever put out. Silent but Deadly is making waves right now that managed to do the thing that the comic book publishers are desperate for. It reached the general public, with people on TikTok discussing and posting about it. But like most comic book stunts, those waves are eventually going to die down. There will likely be some sort of new kick-up when the book actually drops in March, and people start reading it, and I'm sure there will probably be a bump in sales with a bunch of content creators who will read it just to be able to make a video talking about the actual content of this comic that everyone was making a fuss over. By the way, I have no plans on doing that. I don't want to even interact with this fucking thing. But come the end of the year, and Silent but Deadly will likely be little more than a footnote in comic book history. Just another attempt to bring in some attention to help resuscitate an industry that is gasping for air, not realizing that the very machine that they're using to try to keep themselves alive is the thing that is actually strangling them. This comic is just another symptom of the stunt disease, and DC and Marvel will just keep running on that damn treadmill, and Silent but Deadly is just going to fly by and then be forgotten by everyone. At least until Comic Tropes decides to make a video talking about rub and smell comics.